Welcome to the shop. Today we're going to talk about some woods that are good for carving. And we'll just go over them quickly, and then we'll talk about the characteristics of wood that you look for in a carving project and grain direction, which is really important. So one of the first woods that's actually good for carving is butternut. Butternut is much like walnut. It's just lighter in color, has basic grain patterns the same, and it tools really nicely, very well. So butternut would be one of the ones. Obviously, walnut. Walnut is a good wood for carving, been used for centuries. Oak, lots of oak has been carved. It's a little more dense and hard, but it's still a good wood for carving. It holds detail very well. It's not a joy to carve, but like I said, it holds detail well. You see in Europe a lot of carved oak. So, carved oak. Mahogany. Mahogany is actually very fun to carve, and you'll see on traditional pieces a lot of carving on mahogany. It's a beautiful wood, takes detail well, and it's pretty easy to carve. All of it's pretty easy to carve as long as your tools are sharp. All right. Of course, the king of carving woods is basswood, particularly if you want to paint it. Basswood doesn't have a lot of grain in it per se, but it finishes really nicely. It takes detail very well, and it's just an overall great carving wood. I'm just going to set this aside for a second. The other one that a lot of people are not familiar with is tupelo. Tupelo grows in swampy areas like Louisiana and South Carolina, those kind of areas, and it's harvested from the lower part of the tree, and it takes detail really well with power carving. So it's used a lot for decoys, birds. It's very light. You know, you can see the way I'm handling it. It's pretty light as opposed to this, which is probably about the same size, and it's a lot denser and heavier. So it's a great wood. Again, it's not something that you're probably going to see if you go down to the lumber yard, but it is available, and you can get it at different suppliers online. They'll send it to you or whatever. So one of the mistakes I made when I did that eagle carving that you saw in one of the previous videos is I didn't have a piece of tupelo large enough for it. So I went ahead and did it out of basswood. Well, I got a reminder real quick about the difference between tupelo and basswood. Now, basswood holds detail well with traditional hand tools, but basswood will fuzz up on you really bad with power tools. So I started that project with hand tools. Everything was going really well. I got down to the refinement part of it where I started using some power tools and power carving for the fine details, and it started fuzzing up on me. And like I said, I got a quick reminder of the difference between basswood and tupelo. Basswood, like I said, is a great wood, but almost as important as choosing the right wood is getting straight grained wood. You really don't want wood with a lot of figure in it. Basswood traditionally is pretty good about having straight grained wood. Now this piece of basswood, as you can see, is cut flat sawn, so you can see the arches which reveal the cathedrals. And I want to talk a little bit about grain direction, because grain direction is important, especially when you're carving. It's obviously, like with anything else, it's easier to go with the grain than against it. And if you can identify it just by looking at it, you're going to be ahead of the game. So for those of you that are new, the best way I can explain it that I've seen, and this is not something that I came up with, but it is really, really good. These cards, I don't know if you can see them, but this one's laying over this one, it's laying over this one, over this one, this one, this one. So it's stepping down from here down, right? So you can think about that as grain going that way, this way, right? But if you flip this around, now this is the top card and it's going down. So the grain direction is going that way. So you'll see when you get a board, the grain direction on one surface is going one way, in this case, this way. And if you flip it, it's going the opposite way. So you want to keep that in mind. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that grain direction affects the appearance as you're looking at the wood. So you can see as you're looking this way, hopefully you can see, but you're seeing the ends of these cards. They're stacked one on top of another, and in the case of wood, they're like straws. So you're looking into the straws and it's absorbing the light. If you flip it around the other way, the light is bouncing off of it and it's not reflecting the light the same way. So those are things that you want to watch out for and you want to plan for and be mindful of. Okay, so hopefully that's clear about grain direction. Now, speaking of grain direction, how do we determine grain direction? Well, there's several ways. Lots of times you can, if it's rough sawn or skip planed, you can actually feel it, and you can feel, like as I'm running my fingers over this piece of basswood and pulling it this way, I can feel I'm running up against the fiber, so the grain is going that way. If I run this way, it feels smooth. If I pull it this way, it's rough to the touch. And I can actually see the fibers in this rough sawn wood. I can actually see them running straight through here. I know that the grain direction is going this way. And as you look at it, the grain is going this way, and you can see that it's going, so the grain is going that way. So if you flip it, the grain is going the opposite way. All right. Here's another thing. If you look at a piece of flat sawn wood and you see the angular or the rings, in this case, we'll call this a smile. You can see that they're running up, right? This is the inside of the tree. This is the outside of the tree. Okay? If you're looking at that and the cathedrals are going this way, which they are, then you know you want a plane with the points. So if you've got a smile and your cathedrals are going this way, you want a plane this way. This way. You can see that the grain is running this way, the cathedrals are running this way, and you have a smile at the end. Conversely, the other side, you've got a frown. On the frown, you want to plane against the grain. So the direction of the grain is running this way. You're going to plane against the points. And it all works out. Now, that's not considering that some boards, the grain turns and all that stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that. But generally speaking, that's how you see it. So to see the surface, you would look at the end, like here. The grain is running this way, right? And the board is running that way. So you want to know. So when you use your chisels, you want to go with the grain if at all possible. If your tools are sharp, particularly in basswood, it's not as big a deal. And of course, you can get really good results going across the grain. So you want to bear that in mind. I'll just give you a couple other examples of grain direction. Here, our cathedrals are running this way. And if you look at the board, you've got the smile. The points are running this way, as you can see. So this is your grain direction. Now, conversely, you've got a frown now, right? Your points are coming down here, and this is your grain direction on the other side of the board. So this is the way you would plane, or you would chisel, or anything else. And if you look at the side, you can see that the grain pattern is running up like that. And once you get used to looking at it, you'll see it really quickly. Here's another one, just to drive it home. You got a frown, right? And so you're going to plane this way, which is the way the grain is showing here, down. Now, you run into problems sometimes. Here's our grain direction, right? But you can see this area here, there was a knot, and the grain turns. You've got cathedrals going this way. You got cathedrals coming this way, and then you got cathedrals coming this way. In this case, you just do the best you can. Period. That's all you can do. You can see areas here. Generally speaking, in this case, we've got a frown. Frown. The grain direction is this way, generally speaking, but you do have a little bit of an issue here. So sometimes you just have to pick like the majority of it, the best way, and go with that. It's not always going to be perfect. Then you have rift sawn, which is between 30 and 60 degrees. It's running kind of diagonally through your end grain, and that gives you a pretty straight grain on the face, which is something that it works good for you when you're carving. So keep that in mind. The other thing is with grain direction, if you have a board and you're going to glue them together for width, you want to keep the grain direction going in the same way. So this is your board, the grain direction's going this way. You want to, what they call slip match. So you're going to pull this one aside here to here, and your grain is going to be going in the same direction, right? So when you're carving or whatever, you know all of your boards are going in the same direction, and that way to keep you from, like if you're on this edge, you're going this way with your tool, but this is so close to it that it's, so you're going good here, but you're tearing going the opposite way. So you want them to be the same. Hopefully that helped you. I know it's a lot all in a little bit of time, but as you work with the woods, you'll find what works best for you, and you'll get more of an idea of the characteristics of the wood that you're using and the grain direction, and you'll get better at it. So the main thing is just to keep it in mind and do it as you go along, and it's slow at first. You're trying to figure it out, but you'll start getting to where you can do it pretty quick. So that's all I have for you with wood, and on the next video we're going to be moving into sharpening, and you won't want to miss that video, and we're going to go in depth on sharpening, and we'll see you then. Take care.